Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The laughter came first. Sure. Uncontrolled. It sliced through the cold December air like broken glass. Private Mara Voss stood frozen on the firing line at Camp Redstone, her boots sinking slightly into the damp clay. Snow hadn't fallen yet, but the air smelled like it was waiting to. The Marines behind her weren't whispering. They weren't even trying to hide it. "Is that thing painted green?" one of them snorted. Another leaned forward, pointing openly. "What is this, a Christmas parade? Look at that keychain." The rifle in Mara's hands was old, its stock painted a dull forest green instead of regulation black. From the sling dangled a tiny Christmas keychain, red ribbon, silver bell, scratched and faded, tapping softly against the metal with every breath she took. Asterisk tink. Tink, asterisk. An instructor shook his head slowly, disappointed before she'd even fired a round. "You know this is a Marine sniper evaluation, right? Not summer camp." Mara didn't look back. Her eyes stayed locked downrange where the steel target shimmered in the distance. Wind pushed gently from the west. She felt it on her cheek, dry and cold like a warning. Behind her, the laughter grew louder. "She borrowed that from a toy store?" "Maybe it's lucky," someone said. "She'll need it." Her fingers tightened around the rifle's grip. The metal was cold, familiar. The bell tapped again. Tink, her jaw locked, not in anger, but in memory. The range officer raised his hand. "Shooter, you may proceed." Mara exhaled slowly, lowering herself into position. Elbows grounded. Shoulder firm. Cheek pressed to stock. The green paint was chipped where her face rested, worn smooth by years of use. She ignored the stares burning into her back. "Hey," a Marine muttered loudly, "if you miss, maybe the bell will scare the target." More laughter. Mara closed one eye. The scope filled her world. Numbers. Distance. When. Her breathing slowed until it almost disappeared. For a moment, the range vanished. Then, asterisk bang, asterisk. The shot cracked the air. The bell jumped once. Silence followed. Too quiet. A heartbeat passed. Then another. The steel target downrange rang, dead center. The laughter died mid-breath. Mara didn't smile. She didn't look back. She simply adjusted her position, chambered another round, and waited. The instructor cleared his throat. Again. Another breath. Another calculation. Another bang. Another perfect hit. A murmur rippled through the line. Confusion replaced mockery. Someone swore under their breath. But before anyone could speak, a new sound cut through the moment. A sharp beep from the range tower. The red warning light flicked on. The instructor's radio crackled. His face changed. "All shooters, stand down." Mara lowered the rifle slowly, the bell chiming once more. Tick. Across the field, officers were moving fast now. Too fast. One of them looked straight at her, eyes narrowed, not with surprise but recognition. Her stomach tightened. She knew that look. It was the same look she'd seen years ago in another place under a different sky, right before everything went wrong. The instructor walked toward her, voice low. "Private Voss, where did you get that rifle?" Mara finally turned. Her face was calm. Too calm. "My father," she said. The officer swallowed. "That rifle was reported destroyed." Mara's grip tightened around the sling. The bell brushed the stock softly, innocent and out of place. "It wasn't," she said. And as the wind picked up across the range, carrying the smell of metal and cold earth, every Marine standing there felt it at the same time. This wasn't a joke. And they had no idea who they had just laughed at. The rifle was taken from Mara's hands without ceremony. Two officers escorted her off the range, boots crunching over gravel in sharp, impatient rhythm. The laughter from earlier was gone now, replaced by a heavy silence that clung to the air like fog. Marines avoided her eyes as she passed. A few stared openly at the green rifle being carried ahead of her, the small Christmas bell still swinging, still chiming softly with every step. Asterisk tink. Tink, asterisk. Mara kept her gaze forward. Her face stayed neutral, but inside, something old stirred, tight and restless, like a door rattling in a storm. They led her into a low concrete building near the edge of Camp Redstone. The walls smelled of oil, dust, and old coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. She was told to sit. To wait. She waited. Minutes stretched. Then more. Her fingers rested on her knees, steady. But her mind wasn't in the room anymore. It drifted backward. Years earlier the bell had sounded very different. Back then, it hung from the rearview mirror of a battered pickup truck bouncing down a dirt road in northern Montana. Snow piled high on either side. Pines stood tall and quiet, watching. Mara had been 13, her boots too big, her hands wrapped around a thermos to keep warm. "Don't rush the shot," her father had said, voice calm, patient. "Let the world slow down first." Elias Voss wasn't a loud man. He didn't bark orders or raise his voice. He taught by waiting, by watching, by letting silence do the work. He handed her the rifle, this rifle. Back then the green paint was fresh. He'd painted it himself to blend with the forest. "Black stands out in snow," he'd explained, like it was obvious. Like everyone should know. Mara remembered the weight of it. How serious it felt in her arms. How her father had tied the little Christmas bell to the sling with red thread. "For luck?" she'd asked. "For focus," he'd replied. "If you can shoot without making it ring, you're steady. If it rings, you breathe again." She'd failed a lot that winter. The bell rang often. Elias never laughed. Never mocked. He just waited for her to try again. The door in the concrete room opened sharply. Mara snapped back to the present as a senior officer stepped inside. Colonel Bram Havel. His uniform was crisp, his face lined with years of command. He carried the rifle himself now, holding it like something fragile. He closed the door behind him. "Sit," he said, even though she already was. He studied her in silence. Then the rifle. His fingers brushed the chipped green paint. The bell chimed once. "I knew your father," he said. Mara's throat tightened, but her expression didn't change. "Most people did," she replied quietly. "Before they didn't." Havel's jaw set. Elias Voss was one of the finest marksmen this corps ever trained. Until the incident. There it was. The word everyone used when they didn't want to say more. "You reported the rifle destroyed," Mara said. Not accusing. Just stating fact. "Yes." Havel met her eyes. "Because it was supposed to be. Along with everything connected to that mission." Mara leaned back slightly, the chair creaking. "Then why am I here, sir?" Havel exhaled slowly. "Because that rifle doesn't miss like that unless it's been used. Recently. And whoever trained you well." Pause. Outside, wind rattled the building. Somewhere far off, gunfire echoed faintly from another range. "Why keep the bell?" Havel asked suddenly. Mara looked down at her hands. At the faint scar on her thumb from a winter long ago. "Because," she said, voice steady but low, "it reminds me that control matters more than silence." Havel studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, like a man confirming something he'd feared. "There's a file," he said. "One that was never closed. And your name just reopened it." Mara's heart thumped harder now. "What file?" she asked. Havel turned toward the door, his hand on the handle. "The one that explains why your father was erased." He looked back at her, eyes sharp. "And why someone out there is going to notice you now." The bell chimed softly as he left the room. Tick. Mara sat alone in the buzzing light, her calm finally cracking, just a little. Because she knew one thing for certain. The past wasn't done with her. And this time it was getting closer. Mara was reassigned before sunset. No explanation. No apology. Just new orders printed on stiff paper and slid across a metal desk. Temporary housing. Restricted range access. Pending review. Words that sounded calm but felt like hands closing around her wrists. As she packed her locker that evening, the bass hummed around her like nothing had changed. Boots echoed down hallways. Radios crackled. Laughter floated from the mess hall. Life moved on easily, for everyone except her. She folded her spare uniform carefully. Tucked her notebook into her bag. When she reached for the rifle case, her hands paused. It wasn't there. Her chest tightened. She turned, scanning the room. Empty bench. Open locker doors. Nothing green. Nothing chiming. A voice came from behind her. "Looking for this?" She spun. Staff Sergeant Ilya Rourke leaned against the doorway, holding the rifle case loosely in one hand. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face weathered by years and places people didn't talk about. His eyes, though, were sharp with curiosity, not cruelty. "They didn't log it," he said. "Thought you'd want it back before someone decided it was evidence." Mara took the case slowly. "Thank you," she said. Rourke studied her for a moment. "You know," he added, "half the guys on that line today have never seen shooting like that. They laugh because it scared them." She didn't answer. He nodded once and left her alone. That night sleep didn't come. Mara lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind scrape against the building. Every sound felt louder in the dark. Every memory closer. When she finally closed her eyes, it wasn't Camp Redstone she saw. It was sand. The desert had been endless and pale, the sun bleaching color from everything it touched. Mara had been 19 then, younger than most but already precise. Already quiet. Her father stood beside her on a ridge, both of them wrapped in scarves against the heat. "Remember," Elias had said, adjusting the scope, "you don't shoot people. You shoot moments." She'd nodded, even though she didn't fully understand. The mission wasn't official. No insignia. No names. Just coordinates and a promise that it mattered. They were there to watch. To confirm. To report. Then the convoy appeared early. Too early. The radio crackled with confusion. Voices overlapped. Orders shifted mid-sentence. And somewhere far below, a child stepped into view, small, barefoot, holding something metallic that caught the sun. "Hold," Elias had whispered. Mara held. The shot came from somewhere else. Too loud. Too fast. The explosion tore the ground open. Screams followed. Smoke swallowed everything. Elias grabbed her, dragging her back as bullets snapped past. The world turned sharp and broken. When it was over, when the dust finally settled, the radio was silent. So was her father. Mara woke with a start, breath shallow. The room was dark. Her hands were shaking. She sat up slowly, grounding herself. Present. Safe. For now. The next morning, a message waited on her bunk. Report to sublevel archive. 0600. No escort. Asterisk asterisk. Sublevel archive wasn't a place people went casually. It sat beneath the administrative wing, buried deep, its corridors narrow and cold. The air smelled stale, untouched. Colonel Havel was already there when she arrived. So was another man she didn't recognize, civilian clothes, sharp eyes, no insignia. "This is Owen Pike," Havel said. "Department of Defense Oversight." Pike nodded once. "Your father's case never made sense," he said bluntly. "Too many redactions. Too many missing logs." He slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were photos Mara had never seen. Satellite images. Time stamps. Coordinates that made her stomach drop. "That convoy," Pike continued, "wasn't supposed to be there. Someone rerouted it. Someone with access." Mara's fingers curled into the paper. "You think my father?" "No," Havel cut in. "We think your father figured it out." Silence filled the room. "And that's why," Pike said softly, "his rifle was reported destroyed. And his name quietly buried." Mara swallowed. "Then why bring this back now?" Pike leaned forward. "Because someone just flagged your evaluation footage. And whoever buried that file years ago is still watching." Havel met her eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "But you are. And that means they underestimated you twice." Mara straightened in her chair, resolve settling in her chest like steel. "Then," she said, "let's not make it 3 times." The bell chimed faintly as she shifted the rifle case beside her. And somewhere far above them, unseen eyes began to turn. Mara left the sublevel archive with a different walk. Nothing about her posture screamed defiance. Nothing about her face revealed fear. But inside, the world had shifted. The ground she stood on no longer felt solid, it felt observed. Camp Redstone looked the same on the surface. Flags snapped in the wind. Vehicles rolled past in neat lines. But now, every shadow felt intentional. Every pause in conversation stretched a little too long. She noticed the cameras first. Not the obvious ones. The small, black domes mounted high on corners, lenses angled just slightly off-center. She'd walked past them 100 times before without a thought. Now she counted them. 1, 2, 3. More than necessary. Someone wanted a full picture. Her reassignment placed her on range maintenance. Low profile, physical, quiet. She spent hours alone resetting targets, walking long stretches of open ground with only the wind for company. It was supposed to feel like punishment. Instead, it felt familiar. She worked steadily, methodically. Each clang of steel echoed across the valley. Each step pressed into cold earth. The bell stayed in her pocket now, no longer dangling freely. She'd tied it off herself the night before. Control mattered. Late afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in bruised purples and pale gold, she sensed it. The feeling of being watched tightened at the base of her neck. Mara didn't turn right away. She finished tightening the bolts on the target frame. Counted her breaths. Then she straightened slowly and scanned the ridge line. A figure stood there, barely visible against the fading light. Not a Marine. The silhouette was wrong. Too still. Too patient. Her pulse quickened, but her face stayed calm. She raised a hand casually, shielding her eyes from the sun, pretending not to see. The figure didn't move. When she blinked again, it was gone. That night her bunk felt smaller. She lay awake, listening to the building settle. Every creak became a footstep. Every gust of wind sounded like fabric brushing against concrete. Her mind replayed the ridge, the shape, the way it had stood like it belonged there. She reached under her pillow and wrapped her fingers around the bell. "Don't rush the shot," her father's voice whispered from memory. "Let the world slow down first." The next day brought a new order. Live fire exercise. Volunteer sniper support. Limited slots. Mara's name was last on the list. The range buzzed with tension as Marines prepped gear and checked optics. Whispers followed her again, quieter now, edged with uncertainty. "That's her. The green rifle girl. She's not regulation." She didn't correct them. She took her position silently, prone behind a low berm. The rifle settled into her shoulder like an old friend. The green paint blended perfectly with the scrub around her. The bell stayed still. Targets popped up across uneven terrain, timed and distant. The wind shifted unpredictably. This wasn't about speed. It was about judgment. The first shooter rushed and missed. The second hesitated and clipped the edge. Mara waited. When it was her turn, she didn't fire right away. She watched the wind ripple through grass. Watched dust lift and fall. Watched the shadow of a cloud drift across the range. Then she squeezed. Bang. A clean hit. Another target rose farther out, partially obscured. She adjusted. Breathed. Fired. Another hit. A murmur spread behind her. Not laughter this time. Something closer to disbelief. Then the unexpected happened. A drone buzzed overhead, low and intrusive. Not part of the exercise. Mara's eyes flicked upward for half a second, long enough to see the camera swivel toward her position. Her third shot missed. Just barely. She lowered the rifle slowly, heart pounding. The bell chimed once, faint but clear. Tick. The range officer frowned, confused. "That's enough," he called. Exercise concluded. As Marines packed up, Colonel Havel approached her quietly. "You saw it?" he said under his breath. "Yes, sir." "Good," he replied. "Because that means they're done watching from a distance." He met her eyes, voice low and steady. "They're moving closer now." Mara looked back toward the ridge line, where the figure had stood the day before. She felt it again, that tightening, that pressure. This wasn't about proving herself anymore. This was about survival. And someone out there had just made their first mistake, letting her know she wasn't alone. The first betrayal came quietly. Mara noticed it in the mess hall of all places. A simple thing. Her name wasn't called when duty rosters were updated. Her tray was already cleared when she returned for water. Small erasures. Careful ones. Someone was rewriting her place on the base. She kept eating. Kept listening. Marines talked louder when she passed now, like volume could replace confidence. A few no longer mocked her rifle, they studied it. Eyes lingered too long. Questions were asked sideways. That afternoon, Staff Sergeant Rourke found her near the motor pool, wiping dust from her boots. "You're being boxed out," he said without preamble. Mara didn't look up. "I know. They reassigned your bunk. Moved your gear twice in 3 days. Someone wants you uncomfortable." She straightened slowly. "Or gone." Rourke nodded. "That too." He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "You ever hear of Task Group Emberline?" Mara's hands stilled. "No official record," he continued. "Off-books recon unit. Desert work. Cleanups." Her chest tightened. "My father," she said. Rourke didn't deny it. He was attached for one mission. The one that went bad. Mara turned to face him fully now. "Who pulled the trigger?" Rourke exhaled through his nose. "That's the problem. Nobody admits there was a trigger." That night the storm came in fast. Wind howled across Camp Redstone, kicking dust into the air, rattling doors and loose metal. Visibility dropped. Power flickered. The base slipped into a tense half-darkness. Mara was on perimeter watch when she heard it. Footsteps. Not hurried. Not careless. Measured. She shifted her weight, letting her body relax even as her senses sharpened. The rifle rested against her shoulder, barrel angled down. The bell was still tied tight. A shape moved near the fence line. "Identify yourself," she called out. No response. The shape kept moving. She raised the rifle halfway. "Last warning." A hand lifted slowly from the darkness. Empty. It's me, a voice said. Young. Nervous. Private Calder stepped into the dim light, rain streaking his helmet. I was told to bring you this. He held out a folded map. Mara didn't lower the rifle. Who told you? Calder swallowed. I don't know, ma'am. He didn't give a name. Where? Near the old observation post. North Ridge. Her pulse spiked. That area's restricted, she said. Yes, ma'am. Did he say why? Calder hesitated. He said, if you wanted the truth about your father, you'd come alone. The wind surged, snapping the fence behind them. Mara took the map slowly. The paper was damp, edges worn like it had been handled many times. A single spot was marked in red, coordinates burned into her memory. She dismissed Calder and stood there long after he left, staring into the storm. The North Ridge was where she'd seen the silhouette, where the past had started pressing closer. She made her choice without ceremony. The climb was brutal. Rain turned dust into mud, sucking at her boots. Wind shoved against her body, testing her balance. She moved low, using terrain, letting instinct guide her steps. At the observation post, the structure loomed empty and broken, a relic from older training days. Rust streaked its metal frame. Sandbags lay torn and useless. Show yourself, Mara said into the darkness. A figure emerged from behind the concrete wall. Older. Civilian jacket. Calm eyes. Owen Pike. You shouldn't be here, she said. Neither should you, he replied. But here we are. Her rifle didn't waver. You set me up. Pike shook his head. I warned you. Someone else is moving faster than I expected. A second figure appeared behind him. Then a third. Marines. Armed. Mara's heart hammered. This was a trap. Pike's expression tightened. No, he said quietly. This is an extraction. The Marines raised their weapons, not at her. At Pike. Shots cracked the night. Mara dropped, rolling behind cover as concrete chipped and sparks flew. She moved without thinking, breath steady, world narrowing to angles and timing. She returned fire, precise, controlled. One Marine went down, weapon skidding across the mud. Another retreated, shouting into a radio. Silence followed, broken only by rain. Pike lay on the ground, bleeding. Mara crouched beside him. Who are they? She demanded. Pike coughed, eyes glassy. The ones who buried your father, he whispered. And they just confirmed something. Her grip tightened. What? That you scare them. Footsteps echoed again, more this time. Mara rose, rifle ready, bell silent. The storm raged harder. And the lines in the dust were gone forever. Mara didn't stay to watch who survived. She dragged Pike into the observation post as radio chatter exploded across the ridge. Red lights flashed in the distance. Sirens began to rise, thin and urgent, slicing through the storm. Pike's blood was dark against the concrete floor. He pressed a shaking hand to his side, breath shallow. You're not dying, Mara said firmly, tearing open a field dressing. Not tonight. Pike gave a weak smile. You always this reassuring? She didn't answer. She worked fast, movements precise, hands steady despite the chaos building outside. When the dressing was tight, she pulled him upright, propping him against the wall. Talk, she said. Now. Pike swallowed. Your father wasn't just attached to Emberline, he said. He discovered it was being used to erase mistakes. Civilian mistakes. Political ones. Mara's jaw clenched. The convoy. Yes. He tried to stop the strike. Someone else authorized it anyway. Afterward, he collected proof. Her chest burned. And that's why he died. Pike nodded. Officially, training accident. Unofficially, silenced. Footsteps approached outside. Orders barked. Too organized to be random response. They'll find us, Mara said. They'll find you, Pike corrected. I'm already written off. She looked at him sharply. Not my style. He met her gaze, serious now. Then listen. There's a data cache. Your father hid it. Coordinates are in the rifle. Mara froze. What? The bell, Pike said. He used it as a marker. The pattern of wear. The knots. You think that's sentimental? It's a cipher. The realization hit her like a punch. All those years. The way Elias had insisted she tie it the same way. Adjust it the same way. Over and over. Control matters more than silence. Outside, a flashlight beam swept past the doorway. Mara stood. Slung the rifle. Can you move? Pike shook his head. Barely. She keyed her radio. This is Private Voss. Officer down at North Ridge. Hostiles on site. Pause. Then chaos. She cut the channel and turned back to Pike. When they come, say nothing. You don't know me. And you? He asked. Mara's eyes were calm. Focused. I disappear. She slipped out the back of the structure as boots thundered past the front. She moved low, fast, letting rain and darkness swallow her. By dawn, Camp Redstone was sealed. Mara watched from high ground miles away as helicopters circled and search teams spread like ants across the valley. Her face was streaked with mud, her uniform soaked and torn. The bell was gone now, unclipped and hidden inside the rifle stock, exactly where her father had taught her to store it. Inside she found it. A thin memory chip, wrapped in waxed cloth. Her hands trembled for the first time as she held it. Everything they'd buried. Everything that had cost her father his life. She exhaled slowly. Okay, she whispered to the empty hills. Your move. Mara didn't go far. She moved east into the high scrublands, where the ground rose and broke into narrow ravines and rock spines. The kind of terrain that punished the careless and rewarded patience. By mid-morning the storm had burned itself out, leaving the world sharp and clean. The sky stretched pale blue, almost innocent. She found an overlook by instinct alone. From there, Camp Redstone lay exposed below her. Roads like veins, vehicles crawling, soldiers spreading out in disciplined arcs. Search patterns. Predictable ones. They were hunting for a ghost, but ghosts knew how to stay still. Mara lay prone behind a line of rocks, rifle balanced, scope capped. She wasn't aiming yet. She was listening. Wind direction. Radio chatter drifting up the slope. The distant thump of rotors. Every sound settled into her bones like a map. Her thoughts returned, uninvited. To her father's hands guiding hers. To the bell ringing too loud when she was young and clumsy. To the patience he'd forced her to learn, not through words but repetition. If you rush, he'd said once, you tell the world you're afraid. She wasn't afraid now. She slid the memory chip into a waterproof pouch and tucked it beneath her vest, close to her chest. It felt heavier than it was. Not because of size, but because of what it could undo. A voice crackled faintly through her earpiece. Check ravine delta, negative contact. She removed the earpiece and crushed it beneath her boot. Silence returned, thick and absolute. Hours passed. The sun climbed then dipped. Hunger came and went. Thirst followed. She ignored them both. Her body had learned long ago what mattered and what didn't. Movement finally drew her eye. A small convoy peeled away from the main base. 2 unmarked vehicles, no lights, moving too smoothly. They didn't search. They traveled. Mara's pulse slowed. There you are. She uncapped the scope and settled in. The world narrowed. Distance folded. She read the lead vehicle's suspension bounce, the dust pattern, the slight hesitation at turns. These weren't regular Marines. She tracked them to a remote communications relay on the far edge of the training zone. Abandoned. Supposedly decommissioned. A place no one would question traffic. The vehicle stopped. 3 men stepped out. Civilian clothes. Military posture. One of them removed his jacket. Mara's breath caught. Colonel Bram Havel. Her finger rested outside the trigger guard. Not shaking. Just waiting. So that's why he'd known the rifle. Why he'd asked about the bell. Why he'd looked at her like a man confirming a loose end. She didn't fire. Not yet. She watched as Havel entered the relay building with the others. Watched as a satellite dish slowly rotated overhead, waking from dormancy. He was calling someone. Mara pulled out a small recorder from her pack. Another habit her father had drilled into her. Never trust memory alone. She recorded the time. The location. Every detail. Then she waited again. The sun dipped lower. Shadows stretched long and thin. Finally, Havel emerged, phone pressed to his ear, his voice carrying faintly in the still air. Yes, he was saying. She has the rifle. That confirms it. If she transmits, we lose everything. Pause. No, Havel continued. Not an arrest. This has to look clean. Mara closed her eyes for half a second. Then she opened them, steady and clear. She adjusted the scope, not to Havel's chest, but to the satellite dish behind him. Calculated distance. When. Angle. Bang. The shot cracked the air. The dish shattered in a spray of metal and sparks. Havel spun, shouting, chaos erupting as the men scrambled for cover. Mara was already moving. She vanished backward into the rocks, heart hammering, not with fear but with clarity. She didn't need to kill him. Not yet. She needed him exposed. As she descended into the ravine, boots light on stone, one thought echoed louder than gunfire. They know I can reach them now. And that meant the endgame had begun. By nightfall the valley was crawling. Searchlights cut white scars across the hills. Vehicles moved without headlights, guided by radios and quiet urgency. The hunt had changed shape. This wasn't containment anymore. It was elimination. Mara felt it in the way the air tightened around the terrain. In the way routes closed faster than expected. Someone was thinking like her. She slowed. At the base of the ravine she stopped completely and listened. Wind slid through brush. A bird startled somewhere to her left. Then, faint, deliberate footsteps. Not rushed. Not careless. As she descended into the ravine, boots light on stone, one thought echoed louder than gunfire. They know I can reach them now. And that meant the endgame had begun. By nightfall the valley was crawling. Searchlights cut white scars across the hills. Vehicles moved without headlights, guided by radios and quiet urgency. The hunt had changed shape. This wasn't containment anymore. It was elimination. Mara felt it in the way the air tightened around the terrain. In the way routes closed faster than expected. Someone was thinking like her. She slowed. At the base of the ravine she stopped completely and listened. Wind slid through brush. A bird startled somewhere to her left. Then, faint, deliberate footsteps. Not rushed. Not careless. She smiled once barely. They'd finally sent someone good. Mara climbed higher, circling toward a natural choke point where the land narrowed between two rock faces. She moved like she belonged there, placing her boots where others wouldn't look. She reached the top just as a shadow passed below. She didn't fire. Instead, she loosened a stone with her heel and let it tumble. The sound echoed sharply. The shadow froze. A beam of light snapped on, sweeping wildly. A man stepped forward, rifle raised, breath shallow. His uniform was unmarked. His face was young. Too young. "Voss," he called softly. "You don't have to do this." She watched him through the scope, heart sinking. "You believe that? You've been misled," he continued. "We can protect you. The file, whatever you think it is, it won't save you." Mara exhaled slowly. He took another step. That's when she saw it, the slight tremor in his left hand. The hesitation. He wasn't here to kill her. He was here to be sacrificed. She fired, not at him but at the rock beside his head. Stone exploded. He dropped instinctively, scrambling back, shouting into his radio. "Contact! Contact!" Mara was already gone. She moved through darkness and terrain until the base lights were miles behind her. Only when she reached an old service road did she stop and pull out the memory chip. She found shelter under a collapsed culvert and powered up a small, hardened tablet. The screen flickered. Files loaded. Audio logs. Mission briefings. Redacted names. And then, video. Her father's face filled the screen. Older than she remembered. Tired. Alive. "If you're seeing this," Elias Voss said calmly, "then they lied about me. And you survived long enough to find the truth." Mara pressed her hand to her mouth. "I didn't fail," he continued. "I refused. And for that they erased me. The men responsible are still in uniform. Still trusted." Names appeared on the screen. Havel was one of them. "So here's what matters," Elias said, voice steady. "Don't rush. Don't avenge me. Expose them. That's the only shot that counts." The video ended. Mara sat in silence, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on her face. She didn't sob. She didn't break. She understood now. This wasn't about revenge. It was about the children in that convoy. The truth buried with her father. The system that ate its own and called it order. Her radio crackled suddenly, one channel she hadn't destroyed. "Mara," Rourke's voice whispered urgently. "If you're hearing this, don't run. They've sealed exits." But Havel made a mistake. She leaned closer. "He called a closed-door tribunal. Tonight. Off base. He's trying to control the narrative." Mara's eyes hardened. "Where?" she whispered. Coordinates followed. She powered down the tablet and stood, the rifle settling into her shoulder like destiny. The bell was still hidden. Silent. Waiting. For the first time the hunter blinked. And Mara Voss stepped forward to finish the story. Night had fallen like a curtain over the small, abandoned hangar where Havel thought he was safe. Lights glared artificially bright, washing the concrete floor in sterile white. Chairs were arranged in neat rows. Cameras blinked like eyes. Officials in crisp uniforms whispered and adjusted papers. Havel stood at the front, confident, smug, certain that control meant everything. Mara approached from the shadows, rifle slung, boots silent on wet concrete. The memory chip was secure in her vest. Every step brought the story her father had left into focus. Every inch of preparation replayed years of patience and discipline. The bell was still hidden in the rifle stock, a quiet heartbeat in the chaos. She paused at the doorway. Havel didn't notice her. He rarely did when he thought he was untouchable. He smiled, confident in a courtroom he had orchestrated himself. She remembered Elias's words. Asterisk exposed them. That's the only shot that counts. Asterisk. Mara slung the rifle forward, sweeping the scope upward, and spoke with calm authority. You wanted a narrative, Colonel, she said. Her voice carried through the hangar like a whip. Here's the truth. Ed snapped around. The room froze. Officials turned, papers dropped. Havel's smile faltered. He glanced toward the entrance, then saw her standing there. The first shot wasn't fired from the barrel. It was the memory chip. Mara activated it, projecting the video feed across the largest screen in the room. Her father's face appeared, alive, authoritative, precise. Names, dates, evidence, everything Havel had buried flashed before the entire tribunal. Gasps echoed. Havel's face went pale. Officers muttered, some reaching for their radios, but Mara's presence alone silenced them. She stepped forward, the green rifle glinting in the harsh light, bell still hidden, stock warm against her arm. You erased him, she said evenly, voice low and cold. You buried civilians. You manipulated lives. And you thought I wouldn't find out. Havel tried to speak, but words failed. The projection played the intercepted communications, the redacted files, the coordinated silences. Evidence of embezzlement, corruption, and unlawful cover-ups flooded the hangar. One by one, officials stepped back. Cameras switched to record. Witnesses within the room, many previously silent, began murmuring corroboration. Mara let them fill in the truth, letting the silence from earlier days, years of erasure, finally crack. Havel's confidence shattered. He reached for a folder, then realized all proof was against him. His empire of control collapsed in minutes. Officers cuffed him while he muttered, disbelief twisting every word. Mara didn't move. She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. Her green rifle rested lightly on her shoulder, the bell still quiet. She had done exactly what Elias had taught her. Not vengeance. Exposure. Truth. The tribunal concluded hours later. Havel and his co-conspirators were removed from command. The memory chip, safely duplicated, was handed to oversight authorities. Every civilian and military record she accessed was now verified. Mara finally stepped outside. The night air was crisp, clean. Stars shone above like pinpoints of judgment. She let the rifle rest at her side. She pressed her fingers to the small bell hidden in the stock. Tick. She whispered her father's name softly. It's done. And for the first time in over a decade, she felt the weight of being seen, and surviving, lifted from her shoulders. Dawn broke over Camp Redstone like a silent promise. Mist curled between the buildings and vehicles, softening the edges of a world that had been sharp with tension just hours before. Mara stood alone on the ridge where she had first watched the base, green rifle slung casually across her shoulder, the bell tucked safely inside the stock. The wind carried a faint metallic tinkle as if echoing her quiet triumph. The camp was calm now, almost normal. Marines moved with purpose, but there was an undercurrent of awareness. Everyone who had laughed at her rifle, mocked the bell, or doubted her presence now avoided the eyes of the girl who had survived more than anyone could imagine. The corridors she walked were silent in respect rather than fear, a stark contrast to the mocking laughter of weeks ago. Mara walked toward the edge of the ridge, scanning the horizon. Every mile she had traversed, the scrublands, the ravines, the observation posts, had led to this moment. The memory chip, now fully integrated into oversight databases, had exposed Havel, the hidden corruption, and the truth about her father's final mission. Those responsible were in custody, and justice, cold and deliberate, had begun its course. She knelt, pressing her hand against the cold earth, and drew the bell from its hiding place. It gleamed faintly in the morning light, scratches and chips speaking of long years and careful practice. She tied it to a small branch of a nearby pine, letting it sway freely in the wind. Tink, one note. Clear. True. A final mark of endurance, focus, and patience. Her father's lessons came rushing back. The waiting, the stillness, the control. She had done more than survive. She had exposed a lie, preserved his legacy, and proven that precision wasn't just about marksmanship. It was about timing, morality, and courage. The bell's faint chime was no longer a token of superstition but a symbol of accountability, a signal that even the smallest details mattered. The first Marines to approach were hesitant, awkward, unsure of how to acknowledge her. No words of mockery came. Only nods. Quiet respect. Some of them whispered about the green rifle, about the girl who had turned a toy-like keychain into an instrument of revelation. Mara didn't speak. She let the quiet honor settle, the unspoken acknowledgement of everything she had endured. Later, she walked toward the edge of the training grounds, rifle across her shoulder, eyes scanning the distant horizon. The camp behind her was alive but no longer threatening. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter lifted off, the rotors slicing the air. Mara's lips curved into a faint smile, one without relief, one without malice. She had inherited her father's patience, and added her own resolve. The bell chimed again as the wind carried it across the ridge. Tink. A single note marking the end of a chapter. She knew the world was still dangerous and there were still eyes watching, but she had rewritten her story. Not as a victim, not as the girl with a green rifle and a Christmas keychain, but as someone who survived, who exposed the truth, and who carried her father's legacy forward. Mara glanced down at the rifle, running her hand along the chipped green stock. Then she slung it across her back and began walking toward the sunrise. Every step forward was deliberate, steady, and quiet, an unspoken message to anyone who had doubted her. The bell rang one last time, carried by the morning wind, clear and ringing with finality. The story had ended. Justice had been served. And Mara Voss, the girl they once mocked, had walked out alive, unbroken, and unstoppable.